At least they were early losses is something I would hear. And I was like, how the fuck is that early loss when you've seen 4 scans of your baby's heartbeat and then at least it was only like, at least you didn't tell people like, fuck off. It was horrible.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Glam Reaper podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Muldowney, aka the Glam Reaper, and on today's episode, we have one of my besties. I actually am laughing at this. This is an interesting story because we have never met physically in person. We've only met one time on video call because we're both always too busy. We're both working in the same space, interestingly enough, but our journeys have somehow parallel walked side by side for the last 5 or 6 years, something like that. Probably even more, actually, I think. Anyway, without further ado, I would love to welcome one of my favorite people in the universe, Sarah. Sarah McWilliams, come into the house. So Sarah, tell us, gosh, there's so much to unpack, as the Yankee Doodles would say, in your story, but tell us who you are.
Yeah, we grew up in the same neighborhood, didn't we? We're from the borough. I think how we met is really lovely because I think I followed you first just because your TED Talk. And then I was like, wait, we have friends in common. And then when I was diagnosed, you sent me a little gold Ireland necklace, which now I send to people that I don't know or do know and love. And I think it's a lovely little thing that we've created.
Well, because both of us I was living in the States at the time, you were in Connecticut. I think somehow mutual friend connected us somehow. It was like, you guys would get on really well. You said, I don't think even we knew how well we'd get on, which here we are. And yeah.
But I was excited. I remember being excited because I was Connecticut and you were in New York.
Yeah.
And we'd have new pals. But then, pandemonium or the pandemic and everything happened.
Yeah, like we didn't get to actually physically meet, and then you bailed on me and moved back home to Ireland. So here you.
We're just going to chat about our parallel lives and what happened to me while I was in America.
Exactly. So yeah, I got you that Ireland necklace. Actually, somebody gave it to me, so technically somebody else started it. So there you go. It's just like it's a chain that started a chain of events. Being over here can be really, really, really hard, being away from your family and friends and everything, especially when you're going through stuff. Now, you went through a lot of shit, girlfriend.
It was hard anyway. When we first moved the first year, I was thinking, Jesus, if somebody just walked into this bar now that I actually knew, I would be having a way better time. You know, that way?
Yeah.
You meet lovely people, but they still, and they became really good friends, but it's just that little bit of anonymity that's not fun.
Yeah, you cling to home. You definitely do. I find when I'm going through hard times, I'm more likely to call my Irish friends than I am my American friends. And that's nothing against America. It's just...
I think that's why we kind of connect then in America. You have your own little Irish groups of people.
Yeah.
And English and Australia. Anybody else that's...
It's true. It's so true.
So my one is a mad story because we had a little bit of trouble before we moved away. A little bit of trouble. And so we lost some babies and I had an ectopic and we just bought a house in Leopardstown and everything was great. But I feel like in Ireland, there's a bit of there's eyes on you if you don't have a baby or if you're not married or, things like that. And you just like, fuck off. Like we got married because we were in love and we wanted to have a big party. Not yet it. We weren't going to have a baby straight away anyway. And then, so it was 2012, we traveled the world and I'd had a little miscarriage when we came back. And I was like, oh, maybe we would be okay if we had a baby, this kind of stuff. And then the pattern was that they continuously didn't work out. I think we'd had 3, as they call spontaneous pregnancies, when you're just getting pregnant, living your life. And there's a funny little, I feel like I don't belong in any group. We weren't trying to have a baby. We were just living and being together and getting pregnant. And, after the first couple, we didn't even tell anybody because we were just like, oh, that happened again. But all of the pieces came together for me in my brain about things that were happening, like after I had this methotrexate, I had an ectopic and I had this methotrexate stuff, and it gave me Hashimoto's and skin lupus. And it took me a couple of years. It took me a couple of years to figure out what the hell they were and why I was so unbelievably fatigued and all this kind of stuff. And that methotrexate was to get rid of an ectopic that was in your tube. And that started this like autoimmune disaster. And then people would say to you, like, oh, you've an autoimmune disease. Like, oh, it sounds like you have a rash, you know?
Yeah.
And you don't, you try to pretend like everything's fine.
And I want to preface this because we actually have, this is our second time recording this podcast, everybody. So just, we also, I just want to preface this.
We're drinking the last time.
We were, yeah, we wish. I actually do think we wish we were. The Sarah is very, you deal with, the dark parts of your life in a very lighthearted way. Not everyone deals with things that way.
Yes,
we bond over sort of, and I there is a bit of an Irishness to that, I think, as well, where it's sort of, my arm is falling off. Oh, sure, Jesus, haven't you got another one?
yes.
So looking at the toxic positivity. But I just want to preface that at the start of this very serious conversation and very, traumatic things that you've gone through and you're going to tell us all about, with saying that if you're not comfortable, please turn off, or, don't come for Sarah in the comments, just because it's her life and she can talk about it however she wants. So just don't.
But not everyone will understand your heart, and that's okay. But we live on the sunny side of the street. So every disaster that happened to us, and they really were disasters, you just be like, Jesus Christ, this is a fucking joke. You're just like, what the hell? Okay, let's go out for a movie or something, like try to. And also think it's a little bit of it is Irish women as well. I come from women who are warriors, but with soft hearts. And they taught me real strength. Like, I know that all of the things in my life that lined up to before all of this stuff happened to us, like other things that would happen to me, like, knocked down by a car, or, other kind of illnesses that had you in hospital and stuff like that. And you would get on with it. You just get on with it. And you might have your little moment to yourself, or moment to your close friends, whatever. But when you meet people like everything's fine, you're fine. And I think that the women in my family, like my nana is going to be 104 in November. And, my mom and all of her sisters, they live with strength, but like the strength that has grace. And that can come in, like, I think kindness is like a strong form of power that people don't realize. And also, I was talking to my cousin yesterday, we also don't judge. Well, I've heard horrific stories that things people have done or things that I have done. And you they made a choice, it didn't work out, or, mistakes, you just don't judge. You just, oh God, that's a terrible thing that you did. But now, you've done that and you move on from it. Or, somebody else has done this awful thing. And really, we should support them with kindness. And I think there's a lot of power in kindness. But we are daughters of resilience, you and I.
Oh God, I swear, if another person says to me, "You're so resilient, Jen," gosh, you're so, I'm like,
But like, take this for instance, right? This is now every day, and people say to me, "Oh, your arm's not better," and I'm like, "Well, the lymph nodes are not going to grow back; they're gone, and it's permanent." And I wear these horrible compression garments all the time, and I refuse to let them take me down. I refuse to let them get me down. So, like, I take it off when it's uncomfortable, because you know what compression is like. It's yucky, and you just have to, what am I going to do? Be miserable? So I prefer to get on with it and even if I cry to somebody, I will still be making jokes about myself, and that's just who I am. And I see my 103-year-old Nana doing that about herself as well. Like, so I didn't lick it off a stone.
There are going to be so many people, Americans, watching this going, wait, what's that saying? Wait, what's this? Taking notes. Oh God, that's too funny. Yeah, that's exactly it. And so you moved to America with the love of your life. You've had a couple of miscarriages. You've had an ectopic pregnancy. They've pumped you full of crap that has now led to other crap. Tell us.
Take this pill, then this pill is for that pill, then that pill's for that pill. Greg got offered a job. Graham was working in St. Michael's and I was working privately with families, and he got offered a job in Yale. So he did, I remember him doing his little interview, and he was going over to be the director of rugby of Yale and to coach the women and the men's teams in rugby. And I did a little interview for like the Bulldog rugby offices. And we were just like, let's skedaddle out of the country because we've had a couple of crappy moments with the miscarriages and stuff. And then, you know, it did take a toll on us too. He was working all the time and I was kind of going through it on my own. So we were like, this will be great. Let's go away. And we'll just go away for a year. And it'll be great. A lovely little adventure. And we needed that. Maybe we'll come back pregnant, but let's not make that the goal. And so we moved. We'd only moved house and then packed up the entire house. And Greg was coaching the Irish women's team in France. He was the assistant coach, and they won. And while that was happening, I was packing up the house and planning to. And we were at the end of it. Everybody will know, you know, unless you get a company to help you, we were just shoving everything into boxes at the end of it, and just like, we'll be back in a year. We'll deal with it after. I remember finding like bits of cigarettes and stuff. And that was like 10 years before I was like, I smoked. How disgusting. You know, there's just in when we opened up everything that we'd packed, we clearly packed in a hurry. But yeah, when we flew out, we said goodbye to everybody, said goodbye to the house. Everybody knew we were just going for a year, and we didn't come back for the guts of a decade. So it went well, but we had this lovely adventure, but we had all of these horrible things happen in between. And the biggest was after we first landed, I had an ectopic, but I didn't know I was pregnant and was out for dinner and just felt awful. And the next morning, I met this girl out the night before, Shelley, and she essentially saved my life because I was texting her asking would she come with me to the game, to the rugby game, and it was Greg's first game, and we were all excited to go. And I remember dusting on the eyeshadow onto my pale eyebrows, and I couldn't lift my arm up. I was like really, really weak. And I texted her saying I'm feeling really weird, and she was saying I'm still in my pajamas. Da, da, da. And then I said to her, I might need to go to the hospital instead of, like a couple of texts later, I might need to go to the hospital instead of the game. And she was like, are you joking? And I was like, no, I feel really shitty. And she, long story short, she got the concierge to let her in. And luckily they did, because I was bleeding out and would have been gone. Like the topics, there was a girl in the news at the time that had just passed away in Ireland or France. So I knew how serious they were once I heard that in the hospital that it was an ectopic. I went into a really long surgery and then woke up. My mom had just jumped on a plane, and it threw us into this, because we had had 3 or 4 losses, it threw us into like a fertility battle that we didn't enter into ourselves. You know, because this happened to you, we're going to throw you into the fertility clinic, meet this doctor. When you walk in the door with your mom, she's going to say, let's have a baby together. And we'll go, okay, and make it sound like it's a normal thing to do. But really, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves in for. It was a really long, shitty IVF battle that I kept trying to get out of. Like, you know, asking, could I do a natural way of doing this? They were saying, you know, you've lost a tube now, you should save the tube, bypass the tube that you've already had an ectopic in, and just do IVF, and you're covered with 2 rounds, so you're fine. And then of course after the 2 rounds and 2 more losses, I was just getting sicker and sicker and hot flashing and walking around with one of these.
Oh gosh.
And I can't believe it's a permanent fixture now, thank you menopause, but it threw us down this bloody fertility battle that we weren't prepared for. They thought maybe the first methotrexate had shattered the thyroid, gave me Hashimoto's. In Ireland, they sent me to a naturopath and he was giving me tonics. And when I went to see a doctor in America, this is where America's a little bit better for me sometimes, is that they were like, why are you not on thyroid replacement? Your thyroid's shattered. And once they put me on replacement, I started to feel better. And that's all it took. They were trying to go like the natural route, which was just making me sick. I was so sick that, just to preface how sick I was, I passed out while driving, went into the Lewis gate, almost died and killed other people because I was so pushing through. Them telling me nothing's wrong and me not able to function, not able to breathe some days, things like that. And it was like just in fight or flight mode all the time. I remember watching TV and somebody talking and almost passing out because the two different sounds was making me feel crazy. It was kind of the same feeling you have when you have like, when you don't drink coffee, which I don't really, and then you'd have two. And it's like a panic, but there's nothing going on. So it was really strange. It was hard to fathom what the hell was going on. But it was the American doctor that told me, my aunt's doctor, that told me I had Hashimoto's, and it was the levels have changed. So your thyroid levels used to have to be a 5, but now they know to sustain a pregnancy or to feel normal, it should be at a 1 or a 2. Whereas the chart was kind of old fashioned, I think. Where do we crack into the crazy stuff that happened? So I had this ectopic and I went into the surgery, woke up, mum was there, and then we went into our apartment and I got this call. I was probably 3 or 4 days in to recovery and, new scars. I'd lost a tube, not an ovary, but it was weird when you lose it, like something that makes you, I thought it made me less of a woman. I've had my uterus out and everything since then, and that didn't make me feel anything. But when I lost a tube, a fallopian tube, that's when my humor got dark. And I remember my mother-in-law asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said a fallopian tube, and she did not think it was funny. But I did, because that's how I dealt with it. It made me feel like less of a woman or something, like I can't sustain a pregnancy and now my tube is gone. And why? Why are we thinking that? This is not something that you could prevent. And so it's so hard to stop yourself from being hard on yourself when things like that happen. So like yourself, I'm writing a book, and one of the main stories in it was the Dollar Tree miscarriage. This is just a wild story where it's a fucking wild story. They give you this pill that's, like it's an abortion pill, I think. And that's what it's called, like on your papers when you get it back. Misoprostol or something it's called. Don't quote me. And they gave me that because every miscarriage I had was a missed miscarriage, which means you go into your scan, everything's fine. You go to your next scan, no heartbeat. And that could happen 3 or 4 times where we get good scans and we tell when people were pregnant. And then the next scan, there'd be no heartbeat. So it was always a missed miscarriage. It was always something I had to make a decision of how to get rid of it, either a D&C or this pill, those kind of things. It was a fucking nightmare. Just for your body to continuously go through that, several times in a year, over and over again. And then the pill didn't work the first time for this one. And so I went back to them and they gave me more. And then I had to go and get sterilized equipment, one of those little grabbers and little cup and some wipes and all that kind of stuff. And I went down to the Dollar Tree with this girl that I'd met, another girl, Elizabeth, who became a best friend over there. And she came down with me to make it more fun. Because I was like, I'm not walking down to this Dollar Tree to get all this sterilized equipment to catch my baby so that they can test it and see what the hell is wrong with me or it. And there was never anything wrong. We never got an answer. They were like, there's nothing wrong. The baby's fine. There's nothing wrong with you either. Everything's fine. And it's Greg's fault. but she came with me when she found out what was happening. And it's like going on a train journey. You can read your book and look out the window and have a lovely time. But if someone's there, you do have a bit more crack. So, yes, I was like, come down with me and make this more normal for me so that I don't have to bawl with the road. I'll just instead take the fucking piss out of myself and it'll be fine. Greg was in like New Zealand or something. And when I got down to the Dollar Tree with Elizabeth, we were just the Dollar Tree is fun when you're Irish. There's a lot of stuff in there. I was in there and I got the most horrific pain. I was in there and I was like, you have to be joking me. And Elizabeth found me the bathroom and I was just like, Jesus Christ, I'm going to collapse. And I got in there and I remember like through a haze of pain, taking the tissue and putting it on the toilet seat, taking the bits of tissue and putting it on the toilet seat, and had a miscarriage into the toilet in the Dollar Tree with Elizabeth like keeping sketch at the door, and had to blindly fish it out. You know the way you cross your eyes because you don't want to see something?
Yeah.
And it was so traumatic, but I didn't want to see it. I crossed my eyes so I could see where it was and grab it and put it into the little container, which I happened to have. Totally robbed the container and the wipes accidentally by going into the bathroom with them and using them. And then came outside and told Elizabeth, like, it was weird because you think having a little miscarriage like that, with the pills working, there was a little pop, like a water balloon. And it was, I was like, what? And then like something came out, and I realized after that it was the little sack popped.
Yeah.
So it was like a miniature water break. It's just crazy how your body works.
How far along were you at that stage, mind me asking?
13 or 14 weeks.
Wow.
Because we'd already told people, so it was definitely the 12-week mark going past. And we didn't really tell people, even when we ended up having babies through a carrier, we still didn't tell people. We told like really close friends because it was unusual, the situation. That was one of the weirdest and shittiest things that happened. But just again, I just put on Friends and like had a good time with Elizabeth and went out that night. And I was in a heap and I was taking painkillers for the cramps and everything. But I don't know, I didn't want to waste the time being there, and I didn't want to, I thought I was there for a year, but I didn't want to wallow in it. I didn't want to just sit around feeling shit like this isn't worrying. It was kind of like a coping mechanism where we just go and have an experience. And a lot of times I find myself in nature and in the water, and that's still my go-to today. Did my thousands days consecutively in the sea, and that really helps. All right, I don't know if it's just an Irish thing, but my God, the difference when you come back to Ireland and you're sitting in the woods, it is like it's home, and it's 100% healing. In America, it was still very foreign to me being out in the woods or in the sea, just like, what the fuck is that thing? Or I was sitting on a rock one day and I looked over and there's this yellow and black snake, so it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's measured.
Also, if you're sitting in the woods over here, somebody's either going to probably call the cops on you, or a serial killer will find you, I feel like. Whereas in Ireland, it's like, no. But just be like, oh, look at your one. That's all right.
She's crying on a hill. I wonder if she's okay. Fucking Asia. Adam, get a grip. So I met a girl quite like how I met you online. She owned a modeling agency and we got chatting and she was like, do you want to do some work? And I was going, absolutely not. I'm doing IVF at the moment. And she was like, I just did IVF. We became fast friends, still are fast friends. And she used a gestational carrier to have her babies because she has MS. And so knowing her in the beginning of all of this, she introduced me to that world. And when it came to me and Greg being completely done with me being sick and pregnant all the time, and dancing all the time, that we were just sick of it. And there's the kind of, when you look forward, you think everything's going to be great. And then you look back and you go, Jesus Christ, how do I survive that?
Yes.
I think if you'd told me all of this stuff that was going to happen, I probably wouldn't have gone to America. I probably would have sat in a dark room. Because it's happening gradually, you don't really have even time to process. It all kind of came crashing down after. And all the dark humor became way too dark. And so I ended up meeting a gestational carrier through this friend of mine. my bestie. She was in California, and I decided that I wanted the experience of breastfeeding because I would have had home birth, breastfeeding, all of that if I could have. But the gestational carrier wasn't who we thought she was in the beginning. You know, we talked to this girl. So my friend was getting milk off her because you can get, I don't know how it works in Ireland, but you can buy the milk that matches your child. So we had boy-girl twins. So you would need boy-girl twin milk, and you can buy it like $5 per ounce, that kind of stuff. Like, so Greg went to New York and met this woman because I was like with the babies and in an absolute heap as well. And I would find them through either agencies or other people. And God, you just go on Facebook Marketplace and put in breast milk and it would pop up. And some of it was really expensive. Some of it was tested, you know, all that kind of stuff. They had to have tests, but it wasn't, when you get it from a bank, it's pasteurized or something. So I wanted a rule from the mammy and the colostrum and everything else. So we did that. But I remember when the babies were coming, Greg did a 4-hour drive through Florida to go pick up boy-girl milk. And the morning time milk is different to the nighttime milk. Like if you mix them up, you're going to have a baby up all night or a baby sleep in the morning. So it had to be very strict and legal and all of those things. So she was one of those girls for my pal, and she told her about me. My pal told her about me, and then she contacted me and was like, you know, I've always wanted to do this for a family and da 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 da. And she didn't pass the tests for an agency, so she wanted to go indie, and indie is basically just independent, but you know, indie crunchy, and I was and am quite crunchy, so that's for want of a better word. So we talked to her for maybe a year. We went to meet her in Florida, and where you are, babes. And it all went smooth, but there was lots of red flags that I ignored because we'd done one more round, and I'd asked the doctors so many times if I could do it naturally, if there was any way they could just take the egg that's going to come out of me anyway, and they were going, no, this is a better way, and you still have 2 rounds left. But then we were, you know, 100,000 in a hole before, actually not in a hole, we paid 100,000 before the babies were even born. And so they keep saying to you, it's only 22,000, it's only 8,000, you know, do another harvest, get it done. And then we were just like, Jesus Christ, like we can't keep this up. So it was my mom got us a loan in Ireland to get the last harvest. And that's where my babies came from. And I never had a problem with eggs. I always had a bunch of eggs and they were always really good. Genetically, everything was fine. Yeah. But it was when we pumped Greg full of the same vitamins and strict diet and all that other stuff that things worked. So, you know, don't always blame the girls.
But that is, you know, that is a big problem. Huge problem is that it's automatically just the woman is the problem. And granted, yes, we are the caretaker of the baby for the 9 months and stuff, but you know, it takes 2 to tango, as they say. You've had about 14 miscarriages, one ectopic pregnancy, right?
3 ectopics.
3
sorry. Yeah.
So you've had 14 miscarriages, 3 ectopic pregnancies.
They were included in there because I used to include them. And I used to say I had 11 and then I had 12. And then somebody asked me, why aren't you including them? I met somebody who had a name on their arm and I said, oh, who's the name? And they said it was in a pregnancy I had. It was an ectopic. And I was like, an ectopic? Like that was never going to be viable anyway. And she was like, yeah, I don't care. It was my baby. And I was like, fucking hell. Like I've just been ignoring all of these things, trying to get through. So I was trying to feel normal and feel okay and sidestep them, which didn't work out in the end because I was a bag of stress. Yeah, so it had 14 losses total.
Okay.
And 3 of them were ectopics. And then we met this girl. She had all the tests. We lawyered up everything. I ignored all the red flags. So I said, we'll do that another time because it's such a long, harrowing story. Somebody carrying for you like that, is threatening suicide and things. Like, it was the worst experience of my entire life. It's like a hostage situation where somebody's holding your babies and you have to pacify them and pretend everything's okay and be nice and ignore all the shitty things that they're saying because your baby's lives are at stake. So
Yeah.
I was there as much as I possibly could, but it was horrific.
Yeah. And it was your we'll come back to it. There definitely will be a follow-up episode. We already know this. It was your egg, Greg's sperm, this lady's carrying it. Right, we're gonna come back to her. I can already tell people are probably like, no, talk about it now. Guys, there's so much we have to get through. You have two absolutely stunning children now. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, you're stunning, Greg's stunning, like the babies are stunning. It's like the perfect family, which is what you and I have chatted about, how it's so interesting, how life can look so amazing on the outside, but you never really know what's going on in the pains that are happening on the inside, I personally haven't had kids, don't have a partner, and I've often envied that in you, but like, look at all that you've gone through, and it's so fascinating. I find the way we are.
And sometimes we're sitting here with the babies, not sleeping and haven't eaten and need to go to the toilet. I'm watching Jen on a ferry, like going somewhere with a margarita, and I'm just like, fuck my life, So it's the exact same the other way around.
Yeah,
you can't. I didn't know at the time to process the life that I lost having these young kids.
Yes. I remember talking to my grandmother, and I think it was a lot more popular then for women to go through miscarriages and sort of pregnancies and stuff. And my grandmother was supposed to have had 14 children, but she only ended up having 7 because she lost the babies, because that was just what happened in Ireland at the time. We all know now, we know even more about these mother baby homes that are. Anyway, we won't go into that because that's a whole other thing. But that's huge, Sarah. Like 14 losses is,
yeah,
I can't even wrap my head around. But you've 2 beautiful children, and them.
And then, and that 3 beautiful children. Greg, I'm just kidding. He's amazing. So I had a kidney stone. So we were moving. Our very best friend, Eddie, over there, he owned this bar that I worked in for a little stint. Every best friend I have in America is from that bar. And he had a house with his best friend. And we were living in an apartment. And I was saying one day, he'd been so good to me when I had a loss. He arrived with like the equivalent of a paddy box. And I was like, that's me, Joe. And I love this guy. And we were telling him that it was kind of like an identity crisis coming from your house that you finally got, lovely big house in Leopardstown, to an apartment on a campus. And there was a bit of, after a couple of years, I was like, this is great fun, but, I don't want to say that like myself and Greg had, like every relationship, great times, shit times, great times, shit times, great times, shit times. And in the beginning, he was away so much that when he came back, I was pissed off and I was going out. Like, I was just like, how can you leave me for 3 months when I don't know anybody, this kind of stuff. But we also, on the flip side of the coin, became so much closer because it was just us. Even though we were making these new pals and going out and all that kind of stuff, he was the family that I had there. So yeah, he was my family no matter what happened. So we were in Eddie Higgins' house. So we were in Eddie's house, the bestie, he brought me the paddy box, and we were moving out of his house because we'd had the babies. And he moved out of his own house, God love him. And I was moving, and I had a kidney stone. I never had a kidney stone before. It was horrific. I kept making jokes about how now I know what labor is like, because unbelievable. It's the worst human fun. And I went for a scan. And when I went for the scan, they put you into to the CAT scan. It doesn't matter where you're getting scanned on your body. They have you with your arms above your head. And in that scan, I discovered that my arm wouldn't stay up without this pull feeling. So when I got home, I was like, what's the story with my armpit? And when I got home, I stood in front of the mirror and I noticed that one of my breasts was heavier than the other. And I had dry pumped for 5 months before the babies arrived so that I could, when they were off the infant milk, that I could breastfeed them and have the experience of breastfeeding, which I did, and it was amazing. But I wish I hadn't on one end, because it was twins and it was a lot and I was exhausted. But on the other hand, I put off going to the doctor for this lump I found because I thought it was mastitis. Back when I'd had my first pregnancies, I had mastitis. It was needle aspiration and antibiotics, and you're all set. So I was going, shit, same exact feeling, itchy, hot, armpit pull, fucking mastitis again. And we were in the middle of moving house out of Eddie's house into a beautiful house in Fairfield. And our lives couldn't have been better. You know, relationship back on track, you know, none of this going away anymore because now you've got babies, blah, blah, blah. Although we did go away for 7 months when the babies were born. So he did for those 7 months. But then when we moved house,
Greg is going to get a lot of angry letters after this podcast.
He had to. I fully support Greg. What he was doing. He's a dote. We were fully supporting what he was doing. I just wasn't prepared because I was a special needs nurse readers, child psychologist. I can do this. I'm amazing with babies. Baby whisperer from the time I was 6. You know, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, anytime that there was a baby around, you'd just be like, "Oh, just give me your baby." And I thought I could do it. But oh my God, no. Not without my mammy and Greg, no way. A couple of our friends were knocking in all the time, which was great, but it wasn't the same as being able to be there with your mammy or whatever. So it was really hard. So when we moved, all of that was done. Greg's traveling was done. We were home from Ireland and we moved house and I had the kidney stone. And when I moved, I was looking for a gyno. Now, when you're in the fertility clinic, you're getting all the tests done. And I didn't need anything. But because I graduated or had babies, we had a beautiful boy and a beautiful girl and we had them. I graduated, I didn't have a doctor. And you know what it's like in America, it's so difficult. You have to get referred for everything, but you also have to get referred for a GP. So I had no one. And yeah, I came out of pocket for a gyno. I was almost a feckin' grand or something. So I asked my aunt and they used like a regular doctor. So I went to a regular doctor eventually. And this was like October, I felt my boob was different. November, we moved. The end of November, I was looking for a doctor. Then they made me wait 3 weeks for the appointment. Then it was Christmas. You know, it just, shit gets in the way. And so now I get a lot of stick actually from some people saying to shut up about the cancer journey and, you know, stop talking about it, all that kind of stuff. I find that work doesn't work for me, baby. That might work for you. It doesn't work for me. I find talking about it helps me. And also the 50 people that have messaged me saying, I just found early cervical, including one of my best friends, found early stage cervical cancer because of me pushing, because of my posts, because of my feel it on the first. And I'll never stop doing those things. The people that I knew beforehand that had cancer, kind of to the outside people, were doing good and were dealing with it well and handling it well, and they all looked great. And because it was so ferociously hot, I couldn't wear a wig anyway. I was bald the whole time. It was Connecticut in the summer. Like, your hair falling out hurts. People don't tell you that when you're a cancer patient. Your hair falling out actually hurts. That when you buzz it, so my hair started to fall out, I cut it off. And I remember Rebecca at the time saying, what are you cutting it off for? And it's not falling out. I was like, it is falling out. You do this and it's falling out. So I didn't want to see that happen. That was more traumatic. Yeah. So I chopped it off into a little French bob and then buzzed it as it started to get like a little patchy at the back and stuff. And it hurt. Anytime you need your head against anything, the dead follicles pushed back into your head. So it's like little needles every time you leaned against something. So I was dry brushing and doing all this stuff, like trying to get all of the rest of the hair out. So on one side, I thought it was better that I chopped it off. It was easier for me mentally. I did not give a shit about the hair. I was like, chop off the boobs, take out the uterus, take the hair. I don't give a shit. Take everything to keep me here for those babies. I didn't give a shit. But I didn't realize that buzzing your head and leaving it to fall out that way hurts like a bitch. Like getting needles in your head every day, every time you lay down. Yeah. So went to the gyno. She said, it looks fine, mastitis, but we'll send you in for an ultrasound. They'll confirm, and then they'll usually aspirate there. So they do needle aspiration. So they did that, and the ultrasound tech brought the doctor in, and I'd been on the phone to my friend Pam, and she was telling me about her twin sister who's just had a baby. And I was going, this ultrasound tech just came in and said, like, that looks like a tumor to us. You need to go to a breast specialist immediately. And I was like, someone's going to lose their job. You can't say that to people, this fucking tech. I didn't know it was the doctor because they all look the same. They were all hearing the same stuff. I realized that the tech had gone to get a doctor. I thought she was getting another tech, and they were coming in and going like, that looks like a tumor. And I was like, where's the doctor? And then I walked out. I was taking the piss out of it still. It didn't dawn on me that it could actually be a tumor. And I rang my mom and I rang Pam. She was like, let me know how it goes. I rang her back. I was like, they said it was a tumor. And she's like, hopefully it's not, this kind of stuff. And then the next day went to a breast specialist and he did a biopsy. And all in this time, mum and my little brother flew over. And so they were there with me. And we got the news that it was 95% malignant lobular carcinoma. And it was 2A at that stage. And then the specialist did a surgery. It was really long surgery. So my husband, God love him, was in a heap, and Rob was there. I think my mom had gone home because the pandemic was kicking in. So they had to leave, and they were both planning on staying as long as they could. And then other people all have the flights booked. And it turned out that nobody could come over. But that Dr. Kenner, saved my life. If he had been in any way of a rush to go play golf or something, I wouldn't be here. He took 29 lymph nodes out, and he didn't stop digging into my body until he got 3 that were negative. So he got 26, they were all positive, and he was obviously, worried for me because we'd had a little connection then, and himself and Greg fell in love with each other. He was a gorgeous, good-looking, tanned man going out to play golf with Grego. And he was like, don't worry, you're going to be an old lady. I'm going to sort this out for you. And then when I came out of the surgery, it was a much worse situation. I'd gone from 2A to 3C, and there was no more room to move there. There had been a little spread. And to this day, I'm living with the effects of those lymph nodes taken out. I've got lymphedema, and the whole other side of me is completely numb. My little kids put their hands on my back. I can't feel it. Actually can't feel it. It's completely numb. All of the nerves came out with the lymph nodes. But I'm so grateful to him, because if he had stopped at 26 or 27, yeah, that one's fine. He took 3 more after he saw the spread, and I'm all dented and scarred, but I'm still here. So it's a small price to pay. I'm saying it with a smile on my face because I'm so fucking grateful to be here, to see my babies. I just fought so hard to get them here. To then, I couldn't believe the ridiculousness of it, that I was now writing them letters for their 21st birthday and for their wedding days and all that kind of stuff after fighting so hard to have them. It was absolutely ridiculous to me. It didn't make any sense.
It's just, it's mind-boggling. It is absolutely mind-boggling. And there's even, there's parts of this that I know. So again, you and I, obviously, I've seen your journey over the last few years, and we've been internet friends.
Yes, and they're honest with Jen.
But also, we tried to record this podcast before, but we actually, the 2 of us were nearly too excited to sort of tell.
I kept laughing. I was like, this is not how I want to come across, Jen, because it's so fun chatting to you, and this story is ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's 2. There's so many other parts to this. I genuinely feel like this interview could be 3 hours long, if not more. But there's other parts to this as well, because, we talked about, which I do want to touch on, there was an incident with a needle incident. And we also need to talk about how your thoughts on IVF contributing to what you're currently going through and did go through. So,
yeah.
let's touch on that, because those were mind boggling.
I kept saying to myself, go say what Jen told you. If you miss something, to say, can I just go back for a second? Because the surgery that I had, that my mom flew over for, I'd been put to sleep for the surgery saying, please have a phone beside my bed. I don't want my mom to know until I know what's happening, because I haven't a clue. They said an ectopic, but, I had a belly full of blood. And so I said, just please have a phone there for me. And so they did. They had an old dial phone there for me. And I was like, my phone would have been fine, but thank you. And I rang my mom. She knew straight away something was wrong. I was like, hey, tell her, Mom. And she was like, you're on my way. And she just stood up and went to the airport and got a flight. And so I was sitting in my bedroom, and she had gone to get we found this vegan place that had vegan icing, and you could ask for extra. And she'd gone there to get muffins and vegan icing, because she had planned to come over for my birthday, which was Halloween. And we'd landed in August. It was September. I think it was 6 weeks after we landed was the ectopic rupture. So she had a flight booked to come surprise me for Halloween. And she was going to order a cake from here, and we were going to go pick it up, and she would surprise us there. So she went there to get the cupcakes, and I got this phone call. And it was this guy telling me that the needle that had been used to put me to sleep had been used on 40 other people that day, 2 of them homeless. And they couldn't find those homeless people. So I went into 3-4 months of infection control, every 4 days going for a blood test to see if I had HIV or AIDS or any of the hepatitis, any of those things like HPV, all of them. I was getting test after test after test. And this guy, we'd actually been taking piss out of. The anesthesiologist looked like he'd had a night out. He'd one of the lapels of his shirt hanging out, and he was kind of all over the place. Big long beard, which was kind of funny for somebody in such a professional setting, to just look so faded. He was disheveled, and myself and Greg were taking piss out and come, put us down, had a good night out. And then I was like, bye, love you, see you when I wake up. And then this bastard was using the same, it was a needle that goes into the thing in your arm, the IV. Yeah. And so that was horrific. And then I went to the doctor, who I won't name for legal reasons, and she told me that the statute of limitations had gone, because it was a year before I realized that we could sue the fucking shit out of them. We had this letter of apology stating everything that happened. And she said no. She said she would be dragged through the courts, and also it was the time frame for suing was gone. And we were going into another IVF cycle. So we had no support. There was nobody there telling us, yes, you should do something about that, considering they are bleeding you dry for IVF that you don't need because you get pregnant. So it was all, you kind of trust doctors and what they tell you. And then when something bad happens, they just move you on to the next thing that they're going to do. And it costs a lot of money. And then you're just kind of left to your own devices to process all this crazy shit that had happened. So it wasn't until I came home that I started I kept a journal the whole time I was in America. And it was not until I came home and read the diary from start to finish that I realized how crazy the story was. It was something horrific that somebody would have in their lifetime over and over and over again. I was in the end diagnosed with that continuous, because I don't take PTSD lightly. I don't take that diagnosis lightly. And I didn't think I had it. But the therapist and psychiatrist that I was seeing when I was diagnosed with cancer said that I had this continuous trauma syndrome. So it was, lights or noise or jump scares, which I freaking loved, roller coasters, any of that stuff. And I would just pass away because my body had completely changed. My mind had completely changed. It was just too much trauma. And I was going, it's grand, let's go get margaritas, it'll be fine, and then, and I wasn't processing any of it. until I get into the forest and into the sea in Ireland. And then it all came floating out. I had so many moments in the sea and Sea Point where I was like, there's God there. That's God. And I had never been like that before. I was like, who else is doing that? Sending a seal up to come up and talk to me, or I'm there on my own and there's like a double rainbow in the sky, and the rain stops. Like, it sounds crazy, but like these magical things happened to me when I was in the sea and in the forest. And you just go, Jesus, I am teeny tiny and this universe is so much bigger and there's so much more going on. There's nothing else. I came out of the sea one day into the car. Greg doesn't love getting into the sea. He's not really a beach guy. He's more of a golf course guy. And he'd be sitting in the car, during the winter months, high tide would be nighttime. So I'd be getting into the sea. I was not missing a day. It was my mental health. And when I get into the sea, all the tension was gone. And yes, it was cold water shock now, all that kind of stuff too. But the relief of it, it's like acupuncture. Do you ever get acupuncture?
Yeah.
And I feel kind of like stoned or something, that you can't move and you're like forced to relax. And then you have this out of body experience. And the sea was like that. You'd get in, you'd be freezing cold. You'd be like, look out. My sister-in-law started coming with me and she became my swim buddy. And now I couldn't even go without her because she was so amazing for me. I love her so much. And we broke through so many like processes of all of the shitty things that happened down there, like at the sea. It's just amazing. But I fully believe in like nature and all of those things. Like, it's about learning how to rise out of ashes, like they say.
This is how I feel about grief. I'm like, you don't need to take somebody else's trauma to minimize or maximize your own. We're all on a different journey, and what's painful to you might not be as painful to somebody else, and vice versa. You cannot be comparing your issues, your grief, your trauma with somebody else's, and you cannot judge somebody else's.
And I was like, how the fuck is that early loss when you've seen 4 scans of your baby's heartbeat, and then at least it was only like, at least you didn't tell people, like, fuck off. It was horrible. But yeah, it's not about avoiding the fall. It's about rising from the fall and getting up every time.
Yeah.
But then, yeah.
Giving yourself time to grieve as well, though. I do think that's, I get up. Yes, we all have to get up and put one foot in front of the other, but it's also about allowing yourself the time to grieve. And I think by the sounds of it, you didn't get that chance very often.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Did not process any of it. I laughed through all of it. And then, like, people would be like, it's great that you're putting your head down and getting through a global pandemic and cancer at the same time. But we have no choice. What else am I going to do? Throw myself off a building. I had 2 kids and a husband and a family at home who I didn't know if I was going to see again. That's one of the one things that is hard for me to say without crying, because I said goodbye to my mom in Connecticut. I didn't know if I'd see her again. They're the things that maybe wouldn't have come into other people's heads because it wasn't as serious, like, oh, the pandemic, we'll have to postpone our flight. I was like, I'm going to die over here and I'm not going to see them ever again. I'm not going to put my feet on Irish soil. So when I did, my God, I made a show of myself. But I do find that, especially all the women in my family who've all been through hell, you have to stay, your internal voice has to stay positive. Because if you allow yourself to come down into that, like, oh my God, fuck this shit, or I hate him, or why is he doing this, or why did the doctor say that, or I can't believe this is happening to me, why me? If you keep that going, you will collapse. You have to keep that your own voice that's in I talk to my kids about it all the time. That's you in there. You have control over that. So if you're feeling some kind of way and you think that's not okay, I don't know how to do that, you say to yourself, yes, I can. And I do, and I will. Yeah, and you will rise from the ashes like a phoenix. But it's mad, isn't it? The stuff that we go through.
Yeah.
And then you realize after, like, I see myself bald now, and I thought I was fine back then. People might think that I chose this hairstyle. It's totally fine. But when I look back, it's quite shocking. it's quite shocking when you look back, like what happened when actually, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, this is totally fine. I look normal, don't I? And then I look back, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I was putting the kids to bed and making food and doing all this stuff and trying to get somebody to come and mind the kids during a pandemic when no one wanted to go near anybody to go to get chemotherapy. It was mental when you think about it. But what we show and what we carry are rarely the same. So what I was showing was everything's fine, everything's going to be fine. And even if it's not fine, it's going to be fine. But what I was carrying was way heavier. And you only realize when you get to look back and go, Jesus, I have some work to do, lads. Getting onto the sea quick.
And the whole journey is just, it's so heartbreaking for so many reasons. But, you had these 14 losses. You were then thrown into a fertility clinic that you didn't have a problem being fertile. That wasn't the problem. It was the carrying and for whatever reason, which is, you said, you never figured out.
A specialist.
Then it was that. So, it's bananas to me. So it was that IVF crap that then resulted.
So my specialist, a different specialist, because I can't name Dr. Henler, so take that out. This will be the thumbnail for take that bit out. But I was in a room. I was in a room with the breast specialist, and he told me that when he found out how many IVFs I'd done, and I'd actually been harvesting first. I wasn't trying to get pregnant with IVF. I was harvesting eggs for my future because I was losing babies. And even that, with the progesterone and estrogen, after 2, don't quote me on this, but after 2 or 3, or maybe it's from the get-go, IVFs, you are 25% more likely to have a cancer in your lifetime. And that was never said to me. And it's in no fine print. I have every frickin' document from the entire journey, all the genesis, genetics, everything, all Yale University, all of the IVF stuff. Nowhere does it say that it causes cancer. And that specialist told me that my tumor was made up of progesterone and estrogen that I had been injecting to get pregnant. And that was wild to me, that I so many times sat them down and had a meeting and asked them, could I not do IVF? Like, why am I doing IVF if I'm getting pregnant? They would say, to bypass the tube that you have. But I have a tube. Why not use the tube until that's gone? Or if it doesn't work, if I have an ectopic again. So myself and Greg were in between IVFs, then we got pregnant. And it turned out to be an ectopic. So I had to take more methotrexate. It's bloody crazy. And then during 2 IVFs, and they were like, give your body a break now. Get off the estrol, and then I'd go back on it again and have a test. And they'd do, a scan and give a little test, and I was pregnant. So I was getting pregnant in between IVFs. I did not need to be doing the IVF. And when I look back at it now, like, I remember even the gestational carrier saying, like, what do these drugs do to you? And I was just like, I don't know. Because you just think it's going to be fine. It'll flush out of your body and then it'll be fine. But actually, it has profound effects on your body. I might find that I heard it the hard way.
Yeah, it's a huge problem, I think. We all know, I think, even the most sort of blinkered person knows that the pharma industry it's like, even when they talk about the funeral industry, and they hate me using the term industry, there's people in the industry who don't like using the word industry, and I'm like, but it is that. And, it's the same as talking about pharma. We don't want to think that our health is a business or our death care is a business. But hello, it is. Because do you know what? In modern day times, everything is a goddamn business. Everything is a transaction. It's what can you give me for what I give you? And that's just the end of it. And I think if we stop being so delulu about how everyone is just, sitting in fields and in ring a posy and in daisy fields and whatnot, like, it's not that. Unfortunately, like, that's what we've created, is this monster. And it's greed, it's corporate greed, it's money, and it's our health care on the line.
Well, I saw that in I saw that in cancer treatment. I saw that firsthand in cancer treatment, where luckily in America, they give you a medical card when you're diagnosed. So instead of taking the Colace and the painkillers and the pill for the Colace that gives you side effects, and then all this other stuff, they put me on a pill that was for the hot flashes. The hot flashes were 7/10 I would vomit, and they give me more pills for that. And then I saw this doctor who asked me, do I want a medical card? So they give you like high dose CBD and THC in tea bags, honey, different things. And it's all for the symptoms that you have. And it's natural. They don't do that in Ireland unless you're stage 4, which I think is absolutely brutal. If you're diagnosed with cancer, you should get the medical card for the high dose CBD or THC to help you through those symptoms. They are the most horrific. I was begging Greg on my knees, please God, I can't do another chemotherapy. I can't. Is the worst thing. You go out and drink some petrol mixed with nail polish remover while stabbing yourself in the eye. Like, it's the worst thing ever. Seriously, I'd be like, Jesus Christ. I had a spittoon beside my bed because I couldn't swallow my own saliva or vomit. It was like all of these things. You don't even think like, oh yeah, it's terrible. You're going to have chemotherapy. But what you have to put up with is, like, I did yoga one day and I passed out onto the floor. Greg came in and thought I was dead. I went for a walk, and the place where we lived, I had, in America, they really look after you. When you're in a private housing estate, and there's a pool and there's gardeners, and people shovel your snow for you. You don't have to do anything. And they dug a hole for a tree, and the lush grass had grown over it, and I fell into the hole. But it was just a little dent. But I broke my ankle and my arm and everything else. Dislocated my arm and broke my ankle just going for a walk. Like, it's because the chemotherapy was messing with my bones, which it still is. I'm currently in a boot for breaking my ankle, running out to go for a swim at Sea Point, trashed myself at the end of the stairs. So there's all of these other effects that you don't realize. Everyone's moaning about their perimenopause and all the stuff that's going on, and they stub their toe, and I'm like, I can't get into how many symptoms I have and side effects that I'm still dealing with, that poor Greg is still dealing with too. Some mornings I can't walk and I'm so stiff. I'm like, I want a cup of tea. If he's not there, I just have to suffer until I can get down there and get a cup of tea. But he has now become the man that leaves a cup of tea beside the bed, or even when he's gone out at 6:30 in the morning and I do the school runs and that kind of stuff, I still need help because I'm fucked. Cancer treatment ruins you for life. So it's not just while you're in it, it's for the rest of your life. We had backtrack a little bit. The last IVF I did was 3 female embryos, and they all took. So I was pregnant with triplets, and we lost one at a time. And I said, that's it, I'm done. I don't want a baby. I don't even fucking want a baby. I don't want one. But I don't want to be pregnant ever again. So these people thinking, oh God, like, she didn't get to carry her baby. My vagina is great. Like, my stomach's great. I don't have, like, I know my mother never had any stretch marks anyway, so I would have been fine there. But all those things you worry about when you're younger, try your whole life, like, make sure you don't get pregnant, take all the shitty pills to not get pregnant. And then when it comes to getting pregnant, you're just, it's the opposite way. You're like, oh my God, I can't sustain. And then when it came down to it, I'm so grateful for the body that gave me my twins, because I didn't have to do it, because I was spent. I was donezoed. And, I'd been pregnant for like almost 3 years in total of my life with no baby alive, So people were like, had you been pregnant before, doctors or whoever? And I'd be like, yeah, a lot. And they'd be like, how many kids you have? None. Or you do like one of those little fill out sheets for the doctor when you go in, and they're like, how many times you were pregnant, and you tick it off, and then how many live births, and I'd be like, none. It got to be ridiculous. And I would try to make these people feel comfortable by messing about it, which can come across like just immature, but actually that's just how me and Greg deal with things. Is we are some more a wrapped up fallopian tube for Christmas. It's just how you get through.
Yeah, you very much do. Like your social media cracks me up, but like, you know, I love it because there's an equal amount of realness and reality and advice as well, like get your boobies checked and all that sort of good stuff that people need, and the IVF warnings and stuff. But also then ultimately you just see four human beings, two mini ones, and two grown ass ones, kind of, who just love each other so much, and there's just so many moments that like I nearly brings tears to my eyes when I see some of like there was one where you were in the hospital room and they were across the street waving and your little girl was waving and I was like, oh my God.
I know, they kept coming back. So I'm like co-sleeper, all of the, making my own soaps and all that kind of stuff, to have never spent a night away from them. And then I ended up in hospital with suspected lung cancer and suspected tuberculosis. And so they had me in quarantine for 2.5 weeks. And it turned out to be just a mishmash of, I was working at a classroom in a preschool, and it turned out to just be COVID, bronchitis, pleurisy, walking pneumonia, all mixed in to my radiated lung, which is just tighter than the other lung. And so it consolidated in the lung and they thought it was cancer. But I was like, oh my God, it's back. And we were supposed to go to Vegas to see the bestie and go on this little tri-state area tour to see all of our pals since we slunk out of the country, COVID and cancer. Good job. And then we were coming back and I ended up in hospital and we had postponed. And then this year we were going again and I broke my ankle and my foot. The same day. Yeah, maybe something was stopping us from going. Jen, we'll have to come to Florida instead. I have to talk about the community though. Whatever people say about America and the government and blah, blah, the community spirit over there is amazing. There's always a party. Always a gathering. And we miss that so much. Like we are like the crazy people in the town. They're all like, let's go do this. Let's go camping. Let's go do this. Because it's so much fun. And as our new pal Val said when we moved here, geez, you've really thrown yourself into living, haven't you? Like we got chickens within a week of moving in. We got the puppy, just painting the house, knocking out windows and walls and just like living from day one. And
yes.
So I love that saying, bloom where you're planted, because you shouldn't slow down or not live as full as you can live. And I don't think that I've changed from before I was diagnosed or before the infertility battle. Well, is it an infertility battle if you're getting pregnant all the time? But I don't think, like, people were like, have you changed? Did you gain more perspective? No, I was like this before, but
yeah,
you have way more compassion for anybody going through anything. My aunt lost our baby cousins when Anna was born with Edwards syndrome and she was 5 months old when she lost her. And when I had a couple of miscarriages in a row, I remember having a conversation with her and she made me realize that, like you said earlier on, everyone's pain is valid. So it doesn't matter if you've had a stillborn or your baby passed away at a couple of years old or you've had a miscarriage. That pain is all the same. It's pain. And so every single pain has to be respected. And that's something that I've learned from all of my experiences, that somebody giving out about something that matters to them is valid. Whereas before, maybe I would have gone like, go over it like it's fucking nothing, Whereas pain is pain is pain is pain. It's all pain. And so 2 girls that I connected with when I came home had been through horrific situations. One of them, Sarah, had lost her goddaughter to a choking incident. And one of them, Sinead, had lost her husband, who happened to be a family friend of ours. And it was on their holidays, and she was pregnant with his child when he passed away. just horrific experiences. And so we all bunched in together and started this website that Sarah had, this amazing website. You know, she's just fantastic at all of that stuff. She had Lucy and me. So she started the website and brought me in for the cancer section, and it has blown up since then. But the aim for me, I always said I was going to do a website or like a building where people could come in when they needed help. Like I wanted to do something. Went from the cottage business in Connecticut with the organic products and, you know, wall hangings and weaving and dream catchers and anything I can make with my hands. And that was something that got me through shitty experiences, was crafting, as they call it in America. Oh, you're so crafty. And I'm like, crafting sounds like I'm 5, but actually it is. It's just I come from a long line of artists and singers and musicians, and both my brothers and my mom and everybody and my grandmother and grandfather, they met on stage, you know, that kind of stuff. It all comes down to what works for you. And crafts worked for me. I would go through somebody's shitty. I'd make 7 batches of soap and then I'd sell them in a fair, like had a vendor's license, all that. And I ended up in 8 shops in Connecticut. And during COVID, that all collapsed, of course. And then we still come bankrupt. We didn't even touch on any of that. But we had the best life, crawling out of the doom from having babies. You know, the fertility costs, to having Yale health insurance and not being covered for cancer benefits or surgery benefits. And I had this bye-bye booby photo shoot with this lovely girl, Nicole, I think it was her idea, and she did it for nothing, and she was amazing. And I look back on those photos like, I'm so glad that it happened, because I wasn't going to do it. Basically, I wanted, when that business collapsed, I knew when I came back to Ireland that I would still start something again. And so this has worked for me, that I wanted to create something that I, back in 2020 being diagnosed, could come across and could read the stories of people that have been through what I'd been through, or been through what Sinead had been through and Sarah had been through, and get comfort from those stories. All I did when I was diagnosed was search for people that had the same diagnosis as me, the same stage, and young people, just to see if they were alive and how they were doing. And yeah, from that search, found this tribe of wonderful ladies that were still all in touch on Instagram. Some of them we've met. They really have changed the course of my life, and some of them are in heaven now. And it's such an important community to have, like this one, like your one, and Good Grief. It just was something that I really wanted to be part of. So when Sarah contacted me about it, I was like, not only am I in, but I'm also going to like put my all into it, because it's something that I wanted to find when I was diagnosed. So it's a community. So I do swims and we all meet up, and Sinead does walks, and we're going to continue to try and get people that are grieving together.
Yeah.
To not do what I did and hide away from it.
So it's goodgrief.ie. It's based in Ireland, especially a lot of the physical in-person activities. They're all in Ireland. But if you're over in the US, you're more than welcome to join in any of their virtual activities. Actually, I have a page in there which we're going to put all of this information anyway below both the podcast and the YouTube. So listen, Sarah, we could talk to, I know I could talk to you all day and night. You did great. We're doing, it's a fantastic episode. It touches on so many things. We will definitely have you back, maybe in season 6 or something, because there is still so many stories. I mean, it's just bananas. We haven't even touched on the stories that kind of connected us at the very beginning of all of this, like the fairy stories and all of and you getting knocked down, and the babysitting you did for families and stuff like that. There's still so much. So if and when Sarah's book comes out, everyone better buy it, because it's going to be epic anyway. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for just being you, and I don't know, like brave, courageous. Jesus, yeah, just thank you for having us. And
my brother had a gig in town, and my cousins came to it, and my oldest cousin Con, when I said, thank you for coming, I'm so glad you're here to the gig, he said, Sarah, we're glad you're here. And I was like, oh because just it brings it back, doesn't it, all the time? So I'm glad you were here too. One day we'll count glasses.
I know. Hopefully soon. Mother of God, our little snail mail relationship, snail mail on the internet. But anyway, we'll eventually get the physical one going. All right, my love. Thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon.